by the time you all are watching this show, we have already seen Boise State against USF. We have watched Nebraska at Cincinnati. We have seen the God-given talents of Connor Wegman and Houston taking down Stephen F. Austin. We've already won some bets. If you're watching this maybe Saturday morning, a little bit awake and Blake, you are already knowing the outcome of Baylor-Auburn. I forget what other games are on Friday night, but we've seen all those as well too. It's here. College football is back. I am so excited. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode. This is, of course, your favorite Ball-Knower'S favorite ball-knowing show. Today is Friday, August 29th, if you are listening to it on the day it is released. Really fun show. It's Friday. We're going to keep it light. Like I say, these Friday shows we like to keep to about 30 minutes. But we've got a little bit more of a week one preview. We've got one more game that we need to go into. We're obviously going to go into my best bets of the week, of which I'm going head-to-head with ChatGPT, as I will mention on this show. And we're also going to teach you guys how to watch college football. And you might be saying, well, SpringBlake, I know how to watch college football. I turn on the TV, I crack open a beer, and I sit on the couch. But I'm telling you, there's a better way. There's a Ball-Knower'S guide to watching college football. It's not as simple as that. So we're going to go into the Ball-Knower'S guide to week one of the college football season, how many screens you need, where you're going to place your different games. We're going to get into all of that as well. Before we do all of that, if you are listening, watching the show for the first time, first of all, thank you for doing so. I hope you enjoy it. Stick around for a little while. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you may get your podcast, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Any support that you give me, I give back in tenfold. And if you're on YouTube watching, first of all, thank you for doing that. Yes, you are not wrong. This is an Olivia Rodrigo cutoff t-shirt that I am wearing. Support it just as well here too. Like the video. Leave a comment. It's Friday. Leave a comment of your best bet of the week. Let me know what you are taking ahead of college football week one. We can get in the lab a little bit and become some Ball-Knower'S by the end of the weekend. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. And then also, if you are a TikTok user, a Twitter user, head over to @SpringBlakeCFB, where you can find more than just what you get on this show. You'll obviously get segmented clips, of which you've already seen if you watch these full episodes. You'll also get just more betting content, general thoughts. And then what else do you get on Twitter? Oh, if you're a fan of Texas A&M football or you're a fan of SEC football in general, you can find all of my writing there as well too, as I'm contributing to the Gig'em Gazette, a fan-sided page for this upcoming college football season. I think that's all the boring stuff we had to get out of the way first. Let's get into the fun stuff. Ball-Knower'S TV guide for week one. I am going to teach you all as we sit here on Saturday. And really, we have football Thursday, Friday, Sunday, even a Monday game. We're focused on Saturday here. This is where you are just thrown 800 games at once, all different networks, all different channels you have to be on, subscribe to. It can be a lot to make sure, like, okay, well, where am I going to be watching this game, or how do I watch this game? We're going to get into the Ball-Knower'S way of watching college football, specifically for week one. That being said, there are a few basics to get out of the way. The first being, you got to lock in on YouTube TV. Now, YouTube TV has its issues. Sometimes you get a little bit of a delay. YouTube TV is a godsend for college football because they're one of the few places that lets you do a 4-game split screen. You can also access it on multiple devices. It's just so much easier than having one cable box and then having to type into a couple other computers like, okay, well, now I'm illegally streaming or now I have to go to this website to watch this game. YouTube TV is the way to go. So that's basic guide number one. Get your YouTube TV subscription. It's not that expensive. It's perfect for football season. You know what you can also do, what I do every year? You buy it. I'm going to buy it this afternoon of the time that I'm recording the show. And I'm going to cancel it after football season. Because why? You only need YouTube TV for football season. Rule number one, lock in on your YouTube TV subscription. Rule number two, this is a must. You got to go multiple screens. We're going to go over the 3 screens that you need. They don't all have to be TVs. You definitely need a big boy. You need what we're going to call our cuck screen. And then you're also going to need the wagon watcher. So for this Ball-Knower'S guide, it's 3 screens, and you got your primary, your secondary, and then your sleeper screen, or as we're going to call it, the wagon watcher early on in the season. Now you might be saying, hey, I'm actually getting with some friends Saturday at noon. We're going to head over to a bar. We're going to go to my friend's crib, and it's going to be a huge watch party for Texas, Ohio State. Sounds cute, man. Glad you have friends. Glad you like to party. Can't lock in, though. We got to lock the fuck in. Ball-Knower'S, stick indoors, grinding tape. If you're going to sit there and tell me, oh, well, Blake, maybe get some friends. Fuck you. Fuck you. Those are the 3 rules. YouTube TV, multiple screens, sit on your couch, and lock the fuck in. So as I mentioned, those 3 screens, we've got the big boy. Biggest screen in your house that you can find. Put some time and effort, if you can, to mount it on your wall. Just makes it easier for the viewing pattern or pathway. But if you've got it sitting on a stand, a counter, that's totally fine as well too. This big boy screen will either be used for the biggest game of that time slot, or this will be where you use your 4-game split screen that comes with the YouTube TV package. If there is one standalone game that is like, oh shit, we cannot miss this, it gets to the big boy. If there's one game that's, okay, this is probably the biggest game, but there are also 4 games that are really big games, go split screen on your biggest screen, so that way you have the biggest imaging possible for all 4 of those games. So that is the big boy, most important one to have. Not to be neglected is the cuck screen. Now, the cuck screen will watch you enjoying the big boy, but they're not to be ignored. This will be your alternate screen for whatever you don't put on the big boy. So if it's Texas, Ohio State on the big boy, the other games will go on the cuck screen. If you're going split screen up there, the standalone game will be on your cuck screen. This can be, a monitor. This could be a smaller, TV. For me, in my personal setup, I've got the big boy mounted on the wall, and then I've got the cuck screen on a countertop. Or I believe it actually is on the floor right now, but will be elevated to the countertop. Cuck screen is super important because there's too many games to pay attention to at once, and you need that secondary viewing option for all the games that maybe don't get the shine of your big boy option. And then that leaves us, actually, one more thing with the cuck screen. If you are going the monitor route, or if you have maybe a little bit more of an outdated TV, get your Fire Stick, get your Roku, get it plugged into one of those extension ports there. It just makes it easier to get onto the YouTube TV. Or maybe, hey, we got to switch over to Hulu for this one, or Prime. You want one of those so that way you're not dependent on whatever your smaller screen comes with. You need options here for that cuck screen. And then that leaves us to our wagon watcher. Now, this is your smaller of the 3 screens. For me, it can either be an iPad or a laptop. It does not have to be a TV. If you got 3 that you can put in a room, awesome, congratulations. I kind of prefer the laptop or iPad for this anyways, because it's usually going to be your throwaway game that might not be on a major cable network, but features a team that has wagon potential. And that's so important early on in the season. If you want to be a ball knower come weeks 4 and 5 of the regular season, you want to see how a team like Oklahoma, Florida, USC, Texas A&M look against their weaker foes, so we can just take these little brain nuggets and store them in our ball-knowing brains for later in the year. And that is why it's important to make sure you have internet access for these games. Like I said, laptop, iPad, I'll go between depending on if I'm doing work. I'll use the iPad and leave the laptop for the TV, vice versa for whatever other reasons. You need to have internet access on your wagon watcher. A lot of these times, for a lot of these games, you're going to be using some pretty wonky ass websites, whether it's a team website or maybe you do have to go to a Crack Streams or a Stream East. You got to find ways to get these obscure games. So that is the 3 TV setup: big boy, cuck screen, wagon watcher. And now let's go into week 1. So now that you guys are all educated on the setup, here is how we are going to work through week 1 ball knower schedule. So you have your early slate, and the big boy is obviously going to be Texas versus Ohio State. There are no real other key games where you'd want to go split screen for that, and that one is 1 versus 3, however you want to argue it, 2 of the best teams in the nation. That deserves the standalone game. And then the cuck screen is going to work a little bit differently this week. It's going to be intertwined with the wagon watcher because so many teams use these first few weeks as tune-ups. You play your Arlington Bluff or Arlington Pine Bluff or UC Santa Barbara. A lot of these lower level games are happening. And so it's not the heat of an SEC schedule where you've got Florida, Texas, and Georgia, Alabama, and you really have to work through those. So the Cuck Screen and Wagon Watcher differentiate just a little bit in week 1. So we've got the big boy, Texas, Ohio State, and then the Cuck Screen is just going to be Syracuse at Tennessee. I like that just to find out what we know about Joey Aguilar with this team. Syracuse, 13.5 point dogs, but that's the only other game that I'd say is really worth watching in that early slate. So they get elevated to a full screen on the Cuck Screen. That being said, on this early slate, if I see that Toledo is up on Kentucky at halftime, we're going to go split screen here. We're going to go Tennessee, Syracuse, Kentucky, Toledo, because I just think it'd be hilarious to laugh at Mark Poops losing to a G5 team to start his season, probably his last season with the Wildcats as well too. So that is what is going to be on the Cuck Screen. And then the Wagon Watcher is going to get a little bit of a break in the early slate. There is no Wagon team on the 11 a.m. noon Eastern schedule. However, if you do want to be a little bit more of an intense ball knower, throw on VMI versus Navy. We've got a Wagon player in that game. His name is Blake Horvath. He's the quarterback for the Midshipmen. I put $10 on his future for the Heisman because ChatGPT told me it was a long shot to take. He is one of the more fun players in this sport to watch. So you can leave your laptop or iPad closed up for this early slate. If you're bored for whatever reason and you just want to see a really fun athletic quarterback go for, 130 rushing yards and 100 passing yards with 4 total touchdowns, put on VMI versus Navy. Navy's quarterback, Blake Horvath, very fun player. So that's the early slate. Then you move into the mid-afternoon. And again, as I said, week 1, there's really not a ton of competition, so it plays out pretty easily. The big boy is going to be Alabama at Florida State. I think that is the standalone game here of this mid-afternoon, 2:30, 3:30 Eastern time slot. And this is where the Cuck Screen is going to become the Wagon Watcher because there are a few great teams facing lesser foes. I want to see how Indiana takes on Old Dominion. Check out how the new look offense is with Fernando Mendoza in at quarterback. We'll also put on Marshall at Georgia to see how the younger Bulldogs look out the gate. Nevada at Penn State will also be on there just to watch a little bit of a fun curb stomping, see how Drew Aller and his new receivers are gelling in week 1. And then we'll make sure to get Montana State at Oregon on to watch Dante, DeCorian Moore, and this new look Ducks offense take form at the beginning of the season. So those are just 4 teams on in that mid-afternoon slate that it's like, let's just store away some information. Let's have it on in our peripherals. So, they are watching us enjoy Alabama FSU, but we're also keeping an eye on them and letting them know, hey, we're still here. We're paying attention. And the Wagon Watcher, we turned the Cuck Screen into the Wagon Watcher for the early afternoon slot, so we can take a break. Just as I said, this isn't getting as much usage as it will later in the year. But you can turn on the ACC network at some point, catch Miller Moss's first start for Louisville against Eastern Kentucky. Just another game that I want to see, okay, how does this offense look? How does Miller Moss look? They could be in the mix for an ACC title game appearance, and so finding out and storing away some juicy nuggets from there will be important as well. So those are the first 2 slates of week 1. Moving into the early evening slate, of course, the big boy is a standalone yet again. LSU at Clemson, one of the biggest games of the week. Nothing else on the schedule that really competes with it, so it will get our big boy screen and attention. And then the Cuck Screen is going to get its second go-around as the Wagon Watcher. Again, a lot of these early season teams are just playing lesser foes, so all we do is we watch from the corner of our eyes while we're paying great attention to LSU Clemson and just seeing okay, how do John Mateer in Oklahoma look against Illinois State? How does DJ Lagway in Florida look against Long Island University? Texas A&M hosts UTSA, and then USC hosts Missouri State. So we're going to go quad box there again, just so we can watch Mateer in his first start, Lagway back, Marcel Reed and his new wide receivers for A&M, and then also USC's offense. I'm very curious to see how they look out the gate. So that is the Cuck Screen. There were other options for this, and so we're going to make the Wagon Watcher kind of your secondary options. And those are going to be New Mexico at Michigan. You could put that on if you want to see Why kept Bryce Underwood in his first career start, the freshman phenom? You could turn on Ole Miss at taking on Ole Miss taking on Georgia State if you want to see how Austin Simmons looks in his first year as the full-time starter. Or you could tune in to Arkansas Pine Bluff traveling to Texas Tech. My apologies. Those 3 games. Let's just do a little reboot here. The Wagon Watcher in the early evening slate are the secondary options to what we put on the Cuck screen. And it's still Wagon Watchers. We've got New Mexico traveling to take on Michigan if you want to watch Bryce Underwood's first career start. You could take and put your screen on Georgia State at Ole Miss if you want to watch Austin Simmons and this new look offense. Or you could put on Arkansas Pine Bluff traveling to Texas Tech if you want to see how Texas Tech and all their new pieces look out the gate. I believe that might be one of the biggest spreads of the week. I think I saw 52.5 for that one. But obviously, tons of new pieces. Spent $55 million in the transfer portal. Just something that I might want to put on my laptop or iPad to take note of how these pieces all look out the gate. So that is your what? That's your early slate, your mid-afternoon slate, your early evening slate. And then if you are a ball knower, which we all are here, and if you're not, you're trying to be, you got to stay up and pay attention for Gremlin hours. And I know, Saturday night, me, Jimmy, and the boys are going to go out to the bars and chase some tail. Ball knowers are locked in 24/7 on Saturday. Go out Friday night if you want. Auburn, Baylor, you can watch from afar on the TV screen. I'll be locked in at home because I'm also locked up. Gremlin hours are super important. There's still stuff to learn past 9 p.m. And we are going to go to a big boy screen. Most intriguing Gremlin hours game, Utah at UCLA. So much to learn from this game. Obviously, you've got Nico Iamaleava in at quarterback for the Bruins. New offensive coordinator, Tito Sereni, former Duke, was the quarterback's coach at Indiana this past year. Really curious to see how that offense looks. And then Utah is one of my favorite picks to compete for a Big 12 title. I think Devin Dampierre in at quarterback is something that you're going to want to pay attention to, how the defense looks, how the offensive line looks with 2 really talented tackles. So that, to me, is the most intriguing game of the Gremlin Hours slate, and so that way it gets our big boy attention. Now, the Cuck screen, since there's not as many games, we're going to go back to a single one for this. So mid-afternoon, early evening, we did a multicast, 4 games on each on that screen. This is just going to be Washington at Colorado State. And similar thing here. I just want to see how Washington's offense looks out the gate. I also want to see how improved their defense might be with a new defensive coordinator and a lot of new transfer pieces in as well. And that leaves us with the Wagon Watcher. We have the third screen. It's late night. Unless you're using it for some nefarious things, you might as well pull up Northern Arizona versus Arizona State so we can see how Kenny Dillingham's group looks in what is a Big 12 title defending season. So that is a long-winded way to teach you all how to watch ball for college football week 1. I think this is clear and obvious the best path to take. This will change every week, but we'll also make sure that we're educating the people here on how to be ball knowers.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
So let's pivot a little bit here. We are going to go back to game previews because we are blessed with a really great Sunday night football college game. It is Catholics versus convicts for the first time since 2017. Notre Dame traveling to Miami. They are 2.5-point favorites on the road. Over/under sitting at 49.5. Now, what I know about both of these teams is they are built philosophically the same way. A focus on size, physicality up front. Both head coaches have put a premium on those positions throughout their tenures at the universities. Notre Dame's obviously was unbelievable last year, and the depth was so impressive. And Miami has just been slowly building to where I think this year you look at both sides of the trenches and you say, this is Mario Cristobal's plan. This is what he's been working to. So for the Hurricanes, it is 3 guys that are above 340 pounds on offense, and that being the offensive line. Both of their tackles, Francis Mauigoa, who is a projected first-round pick in this year's NFL draft. Markel Bell is the other tackle on the left side to know. And then they've also got a guard, Inez Cooper. 340 pounds plus guys. That's a beefy offensive line. And because of that, I'm really interested to see if they're able to lean on Notre Dame's defensive front. Notre Dame has a premium on athletic players. the size may not be as competitive with the Hurricanes' offensive line. And then on the other side, not to be ignored, that they do have two of the best edge rushers in the sport, that being Miami, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. I don't necessarily know if the interior is as strong as the edges, but as I said, both trenches in Miami is the highlight of what this team is. And for Notre Dame, as I just said, a premium on athleticism, not as much size. But at tackles, Emil Wagner is an NFL dude. Anthony Knapp, ascending young player at left tackle. Now, they are missing a really talented guard in Charles Jagasaw. He hurt himself this past summer in an ATV accident. I'm not sure how long he's supposed to be out, but that's, that was one of their better offensive linemen last year. So you're missing him. On defense, it's one of the deepest rooms still, despite losing 3 starters to the NFL. Bryce Young, Boubacar Traore are the guys to know on the edge, and Jason Onye is the 300-pound plug in the middle of the defense that will try and halt the Hurricanes' rush attack. Now, the one thing that Notre Dame has in this situation that Miami does not is the best running back in the nation. Jeremiah Love, he'll make a difference in this game even if Notre Dame's offensive line is maybe getting pushed around a little bit. He is that talented of a player where I think he can make up for holes not being there. Now, last season, they had one of the best running games in the nation, but against teams like Texas, Ohio State, and Penn State, the rushing yards per game, no, not Texas, Georgia, Penn State, and Ohio State, the rushing yards per carry went down to just 4, a pretty measly number. Now, I don't think Miami's defensive front is of that caliber, but it will be something to monitor. If he's maybe not getting as many impact plays, him, Jadarian Price, that might be something to key in as like, oh, does Notre Dame have to do too much with their passing attack? I don't think that'll be the case because I do think that duo and specifically Love are talented enough. And I think he can make a difference even if it's slightly stalled. But I don't know if I can say the same thing about Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle for the Hurricanes. If size is opening up holes here for Miami, it won't matter. They'll be able to get their 5, 6, 7-yard runs. But if Notre Dame is counteracting that with some really great physicality up front and the holes aren't there, I don't know if Miami's running backs can be difference makers without having clear paths, where I do think Notre Dame has that ability to do so. Now, I also know that, I guess what I think I know about both of these teams is that they took some of their biggest weaknesses from last season and potentially turned them into strengths for this team. For Notre Dame, it was the wide receiver room. Their passing game as a whole was a dud last year. And look, it very well may still be the case if CJ Carr can't deliver the goods. But bringing in Malachi Fields from UVA did more than just add a new leading target. Yes, you have your new wide receiver 1, but it also allows guys like Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison to fit into complementary roles and on paper form what should be a top 15 to 20 wide receiver room in the nation to go along with some solid tight ends as well. So, I don't know if it's something that we'll see as impactful in this game. I do think Miami will try and lean on the ground game, but as opposed to last year when the run game was stifled, I didn't feel great about the passing options. I at least think that the receivers this year will have a better ability to make plays than last season's group did, just because there's a new leading guy, and now the leading guys from last year can be more secondary type players. And for Miami, what they did was, the work they put in was on their secondary. One of the worst secondaries in college football last year, probably the thing that kept him out of the college football playoffs when it was all said and done. But Mario Cristobal made some great moves this offseason. He added an ascending name in the sport to be his defensive coordinator, that being Corey Heatherman, former defensive coordinator for JMU, go Dukes. And then they also added, I believe, 3 starters to their secondary from the transfer portal. You can look at that and say, a lot of new pieces, how will it all come together? Reports from camp, or what it sounds like, is, hey, these guys are they've got the goods and it's going to be a much improved group. And again, I always talk about incremental growth. You do not need to go from awful to great to make a massive difference. Can you go from awful to not that bad? And I think that's what they've done here. So while I don't think it's going to be, the lockdown cornerback room that like a Clemson or a Penn State or even a Notre Dame has, I think it will be better enough it will see enough improvement, which could really unlock the talent they have up front, because one hand washes the other. If you've got corners that can just hold their own for 5 seconds, that makes life easier for Ruben Bain and Akil Mesidor to get to the quarterback and make their impact felt, Obviously, with these teams, we also have to talk about the quarterbacks. Nothing would surprise me from Carson Beck this season. Miami, just like with their secondary, has been raving about the early returns they have gotten from Beck to start camp, despite him coming back from a really serious elbow injury. And I can envision a world where in a lighter conference, now in the ACC as opposed to the SEC, maybe a little bit better run supporter offensive line, because Georgia's was a kind of a mess last year. I can paint a world where Carson Beck is significantly better than he was last year. That being said, he could also show us the same issues he did all last year, which was, really bad pocket presence, poor decision making, and really an overall rushed process that put Georgia in bad position after bad position. And what's unfortunate for some of these teams, this isn't Texas A&M taking on Stephen F. Austin. Like, this is Notre Dame, and Carson Beck is going to be thrown into the fight right out the gate. I think the biggest mismatch in this game is Notre Dame's secondary over the Hurricanes wide receiver room. Miami lost a ton of pass catchers last year, and I'm sure they've got guys that are still going to be solid, but I just don't see in this game specifically the Canes wideouts getting much separation, and that means a lot of weight is going to be put on Beck's shoulders to make plays when they're needed on a 3rd and 8 or just any crucial situation. There's going to be pressure put on him if Miami is, 1, getting stalled in the run game, and then 2, as I project, these receivers are not really getting open against what is a fantastic Notre Dame secondary. So that's what I think about Miami's quarterback. CJ Carr for Notre Dame, I also have no clue what to expect. On one hand, I think it's a bad look that it took so long into fall camp for him to win the starting job. I believe it was a week and a half before this game actually kicks off. I also think that sometimes being pushed that hard in camp can bring the most out of you. He had to work really hard to get it, to be awarded that job. And so if that's the case, maybe this has elevated his play and he's going to be feeling a lot more crisp and ready to start the season. I trust Carson Beck more than I do CJ Carr, but I also believe Carr won't have to do half the stuff that Beck will in order for the Irish to get a win. So that's also very important to note. To me, if Miami is going to beat Notre Dame, Carson Beck is going to have to make some really serious plays. If Notre Dame is winning, it's because of the ground game. It's because it's 3rd and manageable, and he just has to make these short timing throws instead of game-saving type plays. We're going to go to the analytics department, the SpringBlake stats department here. Stats department very conflicted in this game. Miami is 0-4 against the spread in its last 4 games against top 10 teams, but is also 3-0 straight up and against the spread in its last 3 season openers. Notre Dame, on the other hand, 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in their season openers. Under Marcus Freeman, those games have also gone 3-0 to the under. So thank you to the SpringBlake analytics department. I don't think that one really helps us at all. I think that those are pretty conflicting numbers there. It doesn't really paint a nice picture one way or the other. What this all boils down to, and this is really, this is where I get in my head as someone who tries to predict what happens and then to bet on those predictions. Notre Dame feels like a real sucker pick here. I think this is a rat line. I think Notre Dame proved themselves as one of the greatest programs in the nation last year. I also think they had a lot of solid returning pieces. Yeah, they're traveling on the road and Miami is no snuff, but I look at 2.5 and I'm like, man, I feel like that line should just be a little bit bigger. That being said, I am going to ride the Irish because regardless of my brain trying to trick me, I still think they have the greatest mismatch in this game, that being their secondary against the wide receivers, and then I also think they have the best offensive playmaker in the game in Jeremiah Love. I do not think this is going to be a pretty game. I think it's going to be a very narrow win, a very low-scoring game where Miami is having these slow, long drives and settling for a field goal, and Notre Dame answers with the same thing. I think this is going to be very back and forth, very low-scoring. I'm going to take Notre Dame to get out there alive. Final score 21-16. And we leave that game saying, hey, Notre Dame, it may not have looked super pretty in the passing game. There may be some things on the defensive line that scare you if Miami was really able to push things around, but you got the win. You start the season, you get one of the hardest games of your year out of the way. And I think Miami, too, in that game, you're not going to be happy with 16 points, but if you don't get blown out by a team that was in the national championship less than a year ago, I think you still feel pretty good about your odds to compete for an ACC title, and that would eventually hopefully get you into the college football playoffs. So that is my pick for Notre Dame Miami. We are not putting that spread into our best bets. That's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to take another water break. We're going to hear Key and Peele skit, and then we'll go into my best bets for week 1, SpringBlake versus ChatGPT.
My name's Blake.
All right, as I've already said, and you always know listening to this show, I am proving myself as a better ball knower this year than ChatGPT. AI got nothing on us ball knowers. Ball knowers greater than sign. We had a hot start to week 0. I did not feel great about my picks, but I went 4-1. Only loss was a bad pick by Stanford's quarterback. We were one play away from a 5-0 start. We are still up 3.89 units on our best bets this year. ChatGPT, a lot of sucker plays, and I'll say this right now. ChatGPT went 1-4 last week. They're down 3.42 units. The plays that they made for this week feel like sucker bets, every single one of them. If we're sitting here a month in and ChatGPT is 2-18 and I'm above 500 still, we might can this entire segment, and I might just make it I give you my best plays, because I expected, and maybe it's dumb to think that ChatGPT would be able to get some winners, but if they go down real bad real quick, there's no fun trying to take victory laps when I'm up 20 units on a computer, So that being said, we're still going to roll this into week 1, because as much as I'd love to say that I'm off to a hot start, I could lose all these this week. ChatGPT could win all theirs this week, and all of a sudden, we're tied right back up after 2 weeks of the regular season, and basically just 1, because week 0 is a crapshoot. All right, so a lot of my plays of the week, a lot of my best plays, I've already given out to you on this show this week, so we're going to breeze through a couple of them quickly. On Wednesday's show, I gave you Rutgers minus 15.5 over Ohio. If you're listening to this show, that means that game has already happened. It has not happened by the time we're recording this. Hopefully we're 1-0 to start week 1 and up to 5-1 on the season, up 4.89 units. Hopefully that's the case. I take them minus 15.5 over Ohio. Schiano has started really hot out the gate in all his season openers, and I thought they finished last year with some really solid momentum and return enough starters where I don't worry about a drop-off out the gate. So we're taking Rutgers to win big against Ohio. We are also taking Texas, buying them down to +3 at Ohio State. I just like getting to that solid number. I think they're going to win. I think they potentially are going to win big, but we're not taking money line. We're taking +3 because I do think at worst case scenario, you can get a solid push out of that if it's close. I also gave you on Wednesday's show Alabama minus 13.5 against Florida State. I think this is a close game maybe in the first quarter where Florida State and Thomas Castellanos are really running the ball and you're just trying to stay feisty and gritty. But I think Bama will pull away as that one goes on. I think I predicted a final score of like 31-13. I think Bama gets it done convincingly. So that is obviously going to be a best bet. We talked for a while about making Auburn-Baylor a best bet. I have stayed away from that simply because I can't, with a full slate of games, make one of my best plays rely on Jackson Arnold. I think they're going to beat Baylor. I think they'll beat Baylor by a decent margin. I don't know what the final score I predicted was. We're going to stay away from that one. Instead, Saturday night, this line is down to 5.5. I love Utah minus 5.5 at UCLA. I know it's a road trip. I know Nico is in there for the Bruins now, and they were another team that probably did finish better to close out 2024 than they started the season. I am all in on Utah as one of the best teams in the Big 12. I think you're getting good value on the Utes right now because of how bad last season was. And you're like, okay, well, it's a new quarterback, and they still don't have great receivers. I think the quarterback offensive coordinator upgrade is a lighter version of what we're getting with Mateer and Arbuckle in Oklahoma. And that being said, I just think Utah is a better program, a better team, a team I can trust more. So give me the Utes, -5.5 at UCLA is my fourth best play of the week. And then we are going to go to our fifth play Sunday night, Notre Dame, Miami. I am taking the under of 49.5. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. A lot of long drives built between the tackles. I trust Notre Dame's defense at just about every level. Miami's defense, I trust along the defensive line and also want to buy into the belief that the work they did in the secondary this offseason is going to make a big difference. I also do not think that CJ Carr is all of a sudden going to be turning Notre Dame into one of the more prolific passing attacks in the nation. I think both teams just try and put the other in a phone booth, fight it out for 60 minutes, low-scoring game. So my fifth and final play, the Fighting Irish, the Hurricanes, under 49.5. That's 5 winners right there. That's 5 winners. Let me give you 4 losers here for ChatGPT. Not 5 because we agree on one of those games. ChatGPT spat out 5 best bets for week 1. Again, they went 1-4 last week, so take it with a grain of salt. They're starting early on Saturday, taking Tennessee -13.5 over Syracuse. I personally disagree with that line. I think Syracuse will be able to keep it within the 2 touchdowns, but ChatGPT is taking the Volunteers -13.5. They're also taking Purdue -18.5 over Ball State. That's a risky one. I just would never want to place money on Purdue at the start of any season, especially a new era and all that. But ChatGPT thinks that Purdue is going to win that one by 19 or more, so that's their second bet of the week. The one that we agree on is Alabama -13.5. That is ChatGPT's third bet of the week. They're also taking Michigan -34.5 versus New Mexico. That would be really fun. You know, to me, I wouldn't say I totally disagree with that line, and especially a new phenom quarterback, a really talented program, a team vengeful for how disappointing they were at points last year. I could see them pour it on New Mexico, who especially, loses their quarterback and offensive coordinator to Utah. So that is going to be ChatGPT's fourth play of the week. And then they're going to go to the Notre Dame game Sunday night. And they're not going the total here. They are taking the Fighting Irish -2.5. I guess technically I agree with this play. I don't feel confident in it enough to make it a best bet for myself. But ChatGPT's fifth and final play of the week, Notre Dame Fighting Irish -2.5 at Miami. So clearly my bets are better, and we'll be back on Monday's show knowing all but, one of those. When we record Sunday, I'm not going to know the outcome to Notre Dame Miami. So we'll only know 4 of those plays. We'll recap the rest on Wednesday. You can also head to our socials, at SpringBlake CFB on Twitter, on TikTok. These are my best bets. This is a PSA. All of my plays will be given out publicly. I already gave you, a few other ones as I mentioned earlier on this show. We took we took Houston's minus spread of 22.5, I believe. We are taking USF plus 6.5 on Thursday night. So all of these ones, I guess, you're listening to this now, and some of those games I've already given out, have already played. Hopefully you've already been following me on Twitter, so you already had those. If you are not, head over to Twitter, head over to TikTok, head over to the Action Network app as well too. Every handle is at SpringBlake CFB, where you will be able to find every single play. You're going to find that I do a full unit for my 5 best bets, half unit plays for everything else, and we're here to make money. We're here to have fun, but we're also Ball-Knower'S, so we're here to make money. So make sure you head over there to get all of that as well. That is going to wrap up today's show. Enjoy week 1. Soak it all in. We do not get many of these weekends. And there's nothing like your first, right? There's nothing like the first weekend of football back. I hope you all enjoy it. I know I'm going to have a great time. Interact with me on my socials. We can talk ball all weekend. I'll be there. I'll be ready. And we'll be back on Monday recapping this amazing week. Maybe we'll talk a little bit of TCU, North Carolina on Monday night. But until then, thank you all for listening, watching, subscribe to the channels, like the videos, like the podcast, leave a 5-star review. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'll talk to you on Monday. Peace.